Hello, today I'm continuing my look at how to plan a better garden. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm.
Hey guys.
And this is Huw Richards, who's here today and he's going to join me in my look at understanding your growing space.
Understanding and then how to understand as well.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get away and have a look and hopefully have a much clearer idea with how to allocate particular areas of your garden.
Yeah. It's worth looking at how the elements move across your garden. So things like the sun, the wind and water. And the way water moves across your site can impact on what you choose to plant. So this area, which is actually at the moment where the ducks are, has a gentle slope, and our whole site only slopes 5 feet in difference from one side to the very other side. So it's a very gentle slope down, it levels for a while and then drops back. So I know that if I want to plant water loving plants, they need to be at the bottom of the slope or in this area here, because I've actually created a little rise just over here. So this is slightly higher, and I put this in by tipping a massive amount of weeds on here. So I had like a huge compost pile there and that's squashed down over time, but it has just given it enough of a hump that the water collects here. And this is for the ducks because they like this boggy, squidgy mess. They like to dibble in it and feed in it. But if I wanted to plant in this area, I might think about something, either putting a pond in here or putting in some water-loving plants, because I know that this area stays moist even in the summer.
Around this time last year in our family garden, we decided to update some of the old raised beds which were built out of scaffolding boards, and they're a great material, they're very easy to source even for free, but the issue is because they're so thin they don't really last that long, around 4 years, maybe even 5 maximum. So we had to think about having to either bear another year with loads of raised beds half rotten to death, or create some new raised beds. So obviously we chose the latter, and it was creating some new raised beds. But then the most important thing though when you're creating new raised beds is to think how they associate themselves with the sun. So this a beautiful day here at Byther Farm, and it's so warm, it feels like spring already. And when we were looking at situating it, it was a very dark day. But the good thing about working in the garden and observing things over many years is that I knew where the sun would be roughly. So even though it was a dark day, I knew which were the shady areas, which were the bright areas. The other thing that's really important though is thinking whether you align your raised beds lengthways or kind of just straight on to the sun. The best thing to do is to line them lengthways, because that means if you're growing, say, a load of runner beans, you can put them at the back, they're going to soak up all of the sun, and then in the front you can grow something that is a lot shorter, so maybe your dwarf beans if you want to do a bed of legumes. Now the issue though is if you did the raised beds kind of straight on, the narrow side straight onto the sun, is firstly a lot of the beans won't take up as much sun as you want, those runner beans, and they'll also cast a lot of shade onto the dwarf beans. So now it comes to thinking, okay, how do I situate them? Is it north? Do I situate them facing west? Well, the best thing is for them to face south, because that means, if we remember those runner beans, that when the sun rises in the east, it goes all the way over and then it will set in the west. And those beans are going to enjoy sun from morning to evening, and that's really, really beneficial. The issue that we had with the new raised beds in the top of the vegetable garden was if we aligned them south facing, we would not have as much space to put in as many raised beds, which is something that you don't really realise until you get to a small space and think about situating them. So the second best option is to have them on an east facing aspect. So if you can't place raised beds facing south, east is the second best option, followed by west and then north. But anything in north, you should just prioritise growing for leafy greens.
In this garden, well, the wind predominantly comes from the west, as you can see with the glamorous hair here. So it comes across the west. So my key thing here is to put up a wind barrier on that side. So I've put in hedging along the far side there. I've actually got hedging all the way around, and on that side it hasn't grown very well yet. So I've also added this pallet fence, which has dual purpose. It stops the ducks getting in here at a time of year when I don't want them here, but it also acts as a windbreak. And then I have another one on that side of the veg garden for when the wind does blow this way, but when it's blowing west, its normal way, it's protecting the plants on the other side of that fence. It really is just about slowing the movement of the wind down as it comes across the site. So I'm not putting up a solid fence. Even a pallet like this has got some slats in it to let some air through, because otherwise the air will come along, hit a solid object, go up and swirl round, and actually even be more ferocious on the other side than it would have been if it had just gone straight across the site. So windbreaks are better if they allow some airflow to go through, but they will slow it down. Several people have asked me about why we chose to put the polytunnel where it is and this fruit cage like this, and part of that is about the direction that the wind goes. So polytunnel facing the same direction as the fruit cage, so when the wind comes along it's hitting the shorter end rather than the sides. It's less likely to twist it. As you can see, having just gone through Storm Kira, we had around 80-mile-an-hour winds here. This has stayed upright. I'm really pleased. It's stayed upright, it hasn't bent, there's no damage to it. The bit here that looks slightly wonky is because this leg is hitting stone underneath the ground, underneath the soil, so that's as far as it will go in, but it's held up to the wind fine, and part of that is because we carefully put that in the direction where it's going to cope with the wind coming through. And I grow most of our crops in rows going east-west as well, and the reason for that is about the water flow as it travels across the land this way, but it's also got to do with how the sun moves around our site. So I've been showing Huw what I'm doing out here to develop this extra area in the market garden, and in particular the compost heap that I've been building. But you had some really good thoughts about compost bins and where they site them.
If someone's just starting out, or they have a garden and don't feel that the compost is quite working and you want to start afresh with a new compost bin, especially if you have a garden that has a bit of a slope, try and prioritise putting a compost bin at the top of the garden, so at the highest point. The reason why is because the materials you put in the compost bin are usually quite light. So if you put them in a wheelbarrow, it's very easy to push. But the issue though is when compost is ready, it's pretty heavy. And you don't want to be straining yourself if you have a compost bin down at the bottom of the hill and trying to push it up. Whereas if you put it at the top, you use gravity to help move it down. And that's not only going to limit your effort, but it's also going to be a lot safer as well. But then, you know, sometimes you've got that compost bin up there on the top, but if you have a bigger area like this, you've then got to go and use a different method.
Yeah, so I'm using 3 and 4 different sites for my compost bins, so that I'm putting them as close to the working area as possible, So there's some on the edge of the duck enclosure, there's some around the annual vegetable garden, and now I've got some more here in the market garden. So I'm actually not going very far. I'm not taking those raw materials very far at all.
I think that's amazing, and it's something that I'm doing back home as well, just having a few different compost sites. As you're doing, you're building 2 bins. You mentioned maybe building a 3rd.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you should be doing if you have multiple sites, because you don't want to find that, well, one compost bin is ready here, the other one's half ready, and then the other one I've got to fill up. You should prioritise filling the 2 or 3 different locations with the first bin as soon as possible. So that means you have compost ready in each area as soon as possible.
To make it easy for you to go back and have another look at the points that we've made, I will leave timestamps in the information box below, and you just click on those and that will take you straight to the section that you want to see.
And that's really useful, especially for something like this, because there's so many different things to consider, and very often you can just feel a bit too much to think about, too much to take on at one time. So literally just focus on one thing at a time, feel confident about that, and then move on to the next thing. So for example, feel confident about where you're going to put your compost bin, and then think maybe about your wind shelter, and then once you're confident about that, move it on, so you don't have to tackle it all in one go.
And next time I'll look at ways of bringing all the information together and to actually to create your garden plan.
I'm excited to see that.
Be good. It's exciting.